for $130 if you have 3 or more qualifying children. The Child Care and Development Fund offers subsidies to help low-income families pay for quality childcare so that both parents can work or go to school. And the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program offers financial assistance and job training to help you become self-sufficient. Other tax credits include the Child Tax Credit, the Child and Dependent Care Credit, the Premium Tax Credit, and the Earned Income Tax Credit. For example, you can get free food stamps, Medicaid, housing assistance, energy assistance, free school lunches for your kids, free or reduced cost internet service, free tax filing, and so much more. You see, there are dozens of legal aid organizations across the country that offer free legal services to low-income individuals. You just have to contact your local office to see if you qualify. But the reality is that millions of Americans need them to survive. And if you do find yourself in that situation, then please reach out for help. Don't be proud or ashamed. We are all in this together. Why? Because I'm just a random guy on the internet. But hey, at least I'm not poor. Just visit benefits.gov to see what you qualify for. It's not right. And hopefully these programs can help alleviate some of their suffering. They handle cases involving things like housing, consumer law, employment, family law, public benefits, and much more. There's a lot of red tape involved and they don't provide nearly enough support. But the reality is that they do help millions of struggling families get by each and every year. For example, if you're living alone, you need to make less than $14,970 to be considered poor. And if you have a spouse, then you need to make less than $20,430. See, if you make below a certain amount, then you qualify for all sorts of valuable government benefits from free healthcare to free food stamps and much, much more. The poverty rate is the percentage of people in a given population who live below the poverty line. If you're currently paying too much for rent, then you can contact your local public housing agency to see if you qualify for subsidized housing. On top of that, if you own a home, then you might qualify for property tax exemptions. Every state has different rules and requirements, but it never hurts to ask. For example, in California, homeowners age 60 and older with an annual income of less than $65,000 may qualify for the property tax exemption, which can reduce their property taxes by 50% or more. And this is true even if you're making above the poverty line. If you have a very low income, then you should qualify for a reduced rent payment. And what's really crazy is that a majority of Americans are just one emergency away from being poor themselves. In fact, according to a recent survey by OnePoll, almost half of all respondents said they could only cover 1 to 3 months of expenses with their current savings. And 1 in 10 said they couldn't cover any at all. This means that millions of Americans could end up falling into poverty if they experience a job loss, health issue, or some other major life event that causes them to incur high medical bills. As of the first quarter of 2024, the official poverty rate in the United States was 12.8%. That means that about 1 in every 8 Americans were living in poverty based on these calculations. To start, this is the official definition of poverty according to the U.S. Census Bureau. If you're a single person living alone, then you must make less than $15,900 per year to be considered poor. If you have a family of 2, you would need to make less than $21,850. For example, if you're living alone and make less than $14,775 per year, then you would fall below the poverty line. So here are the updated 2025 federal poverty guidelines that went into effect on October 1st. Now remember, this only applies to households, which means if you live with your parents or have roommates, then your income gets combined with theirs. This is why if you're living alone but have adult children who depend on you, your income needs to be even lower to qualify. According to the census, a household with 1 person under 60 years old and 1 person over 60 years old who's not the spouse of the other, they would need to make less than $18,930 to be considered poor. And a household with 2 people under 60, 1 person between 60 and 74 and no spouse, they would need to make less than $26,290. And if you have kids, then you get even more money. On top of that, if you have any children under the age of 6, then you also get an additional $3,020 per child added to your annual income. Then the poverty line goes up significantly if you have a disability. That's because disabled people face higher costs due to the medical care that they require. So if you have a disability and you're living alone, then you need to make less than $24,050 to be considered poor. And if you have a family of 2, then you need to make less than $32,700. But out of all of these categories, the one that probably has the biggest difference is if you're elderly. Now keep in mind that these are just the poverty guidelines and not the actual poverty rate. However, a new study shows that the real poverty rate is much higher. So let's say you do make less than these poverty guidelines. You also gain access to several tax credits that put money directly into your pocket. In addition to that, if you have kids, then you can also get free education. Now, obviously, these programs aren't perfect. And another thing that happens when you're considered poor is that you become eligible for public housing. In fact, the average Section 8 housing subsidy nationwide is $785 per month. And finally, the last thing that happens when you're poor is that you become eligible for free legal services. One of my favorites is called Legal Aid, which provides free civil legal services to low-income individuals in several states. Personally, I hope that none of you ever have to rely on any of these programs. The US is arguably the wealthiest country in the world, and yet millions of our fellow Americans are struggling to put food on the table and a roof over their heads. But that's just my opinion. That's 1 minute. See you next time.
Jurassic World, the wild survives. You hear the thunder in ancient skies.